We will be starting the program shortly for those of you on YouTube joining us right now. We will be starting right now. We are starting the webinar.
Good evening, everyone. This is again, we're happy to be back on a Monday night at Sharia Crime Stoppers webinars, news analysis. We've got Mary, of course. Good evening, Mary.
Hi, Dick.
And our special guest tonight is Leo Hohmann. Leo, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Dick. Glad to be with you.
Before we start, let's mention a little bit of administrative item. We really appreciate Leo being with us tonight. As things happen, Leo was able to jump in and help us tonight. Our good friend Claire Lopez was not available. She had a scheduling conflict. This might be the busiest lady in all of national security and media, giving the world her great expertise. Mary and Leo, I know you all agree with me that we need to be really grateful to Claire for all the incredible webinars she's given us to date. We really appreciated Claire.
She's fantastic. Yep.
And we want to remind you that you can continue to connect with her and follow her in the other platforms that she's on. She's a regular person on the Worldview Weekend program with Brandon House, and they have a TV broadcast that she's a big part of. Today, they posted her latest program, How Iran's Hezbollah terror cells hide, plot, and prepare inside the United States. As you know, Claire is an expert in this space. Another article that she just posted, Facing Iran in 2021. So she's giving guidance to what America needs to do in 2021 to continue to control and not be controlled by Iran as a major dangerous player in the world. So Twitter, of course, has got her at Claire M. Lopez. So please continue to follow Claire. And again, thank you, Claire. Leo, again, we really appreciate your jumping in to help us tonight. And why don't you go ahead and get us started? Mary and I are going to hang around and interact and bring questions from the audience as well.
Sure. Thank you, Claire Wright, for all that you've done in 2020. While it was short notice that I received filling in for Claire, it's not like we lack any hot news to cover tonight. It's been just almost hard to keep up with, folks. Let's start by updating ourselves on the latest election-related news. We are 1 week out now. 1 week from tomorrow is election day. If you haven't voted early, I would suggest that you consider that. I know a lot of people like to vote on election day, but this year promises to be unlike any previous election year, especially as we get closer to the big day. I personally, I don't know about you, Dick, Mary, but I would not be surprised at anything that could happen on election day.
That's right.
Up to and including violence at the polls, if not violence, at least threats of it, and trying to intimidate people. So let's get out and cast our vote, if at all possible, before Election Day. You may have seen the 60 Minutes interview last night with Joe Biden, in which they did bring up the Hunter Biden emails, the Hunter Biden laptop, but unbelievably, the female journalist who interviewed him did not, I repeat, did not ask him the two most obvious questions. Mr. Biden, Mr. Former Vice President, are the emails found on your son's laptop real? And are you the big guy? The quote unquote big guy. Nope, she couldn't do it. She just could not bring herself to ask the two most elemental questions that any so-called journalist would have asked. Anyone who's been through Journalism 101 would have known to ask. No, she could not do it.
Was that the interview where he thought he was running against Bush?
I believe it is, yes. So a lot of us believe that even if Biden is able to pull this out, which at this point I don't think he's going to be able to, I don't want to make a hard prediction, but I'm definitely seeing Trump winning this thing. But if for some reason, that through election trickery and cheating or whatever, he is able to be declared the president, there is good indications that he will not ever serve in the Oval Office, at least not for very long, maybe 1 or 2, 3 months max. Mary, what do you have to share with us on that as far as an Article 25 proposal coming from Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Pelosi's been working on the 25th Amendment bill, where she's talking about replacing the president. Now, she doesn't get specific. She references Trump as the current president in her thought process, but we all know where she's going with it. And Trump has recently made a statement about how that Pelosi is setting up so that Harris can become the next president, where they remove Biden. The key factor in all of this is the vice president going along with it. Now, having said that, think about it. It's not going to happen when, and again, you guys have all heard me say when. I'm not going to say if President Trump gets elected. Vice President Pence isn't going to go along with that. But if Biden gets elected president, God help us, you know darn well Harris is going to jump in there with Pelosi and this whole commission that she's trying to create to take Biden down, because we all know he is a sick man. We know that he has got some kind of form of dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever it is. He can't even figure out what city he's in. So we know that that's going to happen in a heartbeat shortly after, if Biden gets elected. This commission is relying on the vice president going along with it.
Right. So they want to set up a commission, correct?
Correct.
Well, isn't that interesting that when asked now about court packing, Biden also says, let's set up a commission to study it. He won't go on the record as saying he will or he won't pack the court, which, as we know, means add justices to the court, expand the court from the current 9 justices to 11 or 13. And of course, those would all be liberal, progressive, Democratic mouthpieces who would legislate from the court. But he won't answer the question. All he will say is, we will create a commission to study the court issues. So it sounds like a Biden administration or a Harris administration, whatever you want to call it, would have rule by commission, which is outright technocracy, folks. That's what technocrats do. They take power away from elected officials and put it in the hands of unelected bureaucrats. The unelected experts make all the decisions, and the elected officials basically just serve as figureheads. So it looks like they will have technocracy on steroids under a Biden administration. And it all goes back to the same issue could be applied with COVID. President Trump got railroaded into, I think, hoodwinked. He did not, for some reason, he did not see the globalist conspiracy that was forming right in front of his eyes back in March, April, and May. And he put Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx on that commission, the White House task force. And that was an example, folks, of what we get when we allow the government to hand off the big decisions to unelected bureaucrats. We simply cannot tolerate that. We must have the accountability, and the buck must stop with our elected officials. They should not be handing off these big decisions to unelected bureaucrats. And we can see how under a Democrat administration, that would go off on steroids. Really something to be worried about if we do end up with a Biden-Harris administration.
Leo, one other quick comment. If you remember, under Obama, we had czars. Those were people who were appointed and were given great power, but were not necessarily reviewed by the Senate as secretary of a department type process. So just imagine in your own mind, if Harris was the president through the process you described here, who the vice president might be, who might be the attorney general, who might be the czar in charge of health or the czar in charge of economics. Think about various roles for the candidates that didn't make it, Buttigieg, Warren, etc. So the notion of czars, unconfirmed, as well as
you are 100% right, Dick. And who would be the Second Amendment czar? That would be none other than our friend Beto O'Rourke.
Okay, there you go.
Frightening.
Keith, you got Keith Ellison for Attorney General. How about well, a lot of other things. Keep in mind, there is a block of people like Kamala who are all trained out of the same pro-Chinese institute. That includes Cory Booker. Keep in mind, Buttigieg's father is the person who translated for the Frankfurt School all of the Marxist material that led to the Frankfurt School's impact in America.
He was a communist, yeah.
Right. You've got tremendously evil characters waiting to be assigned with or without the Senate approval.
Waiting in the wings. You're exactly right. The cockroaches are currently up in the attic waiting to descend on us.
Okay.
Salivating. Yeah. I could just get this picture in my mind of salivating cockroaches, just waiting to descend on us.
Creepy.
Yes, indeed.
There was another article I came across I want to tell you about. I mentioned to Dick, and I forgot to mention it ahead of time to you, but on Zero Hedge, last Monday, Tyler Durden wrote, many Americans are now planning to bug out ahead of Election Day as authorities brace for chaos. So, and it doesn't matter who gets elected, no matter who ends up being declared the winner. When it is all over, there will be millions upon millions of very angry voters out there that are likely to feel as though the election was stolen from them. And that is a recipe for widespread social unrest. Later on, he says law enforcement authorities all over the nation are also deeply concerned about the potential violence. So it's real. The threat is real, no matter who gets elected. It is
all over, Mary. We're reading similar reports to what you just read. I've been writing about it for several months.
You have.
But we are now seeing it come out in all sorts of bigger platforms. Glenn Beck has been talking about it.
Yes.
I read another article today. I think we'll go over an article by the Federalist, but they've had another one about exactly what you said. It is literally popping up all over how law enforcement is in emergency mode now, preparing for Election Day. That's why I said earlier, don't wait till Election Day to vote. If we get through Election Day, which we may do, there may be no violence to speak of. I'm worried about the day after Election Day when we don't have a declared winner, or we do have Trump declaring victory because he's won, 270 plus electoral college votes, and he's even won the popular vote as far as what we know on election night. But then remember, Joe Biden has been advised not to concede. Do not concede under any circumstances on election night. And we're going to then draw this thing out. And that, bam, is when the people get out in the streets and we start seeing the violence the day after the election.
What's interesting, Leo, what's interesting with the early voting is if you were going to try to use intimidation and violence on election day, you'd think there'd be some intimidation on the early voting, et cetera. I drove by a place today where there was literally 200 people in line. So it is happening. Yes. But one of our attendees, I'll just mention, Karen, actually says something interesting. Her concern is when you've got day after day after day of open early voting, you have, do you really have the kind of monitoring of the integrity of the election that you have on election day when you finally get enough volunteers to show up to be poll watchers? If you've got multiple days of voting, are there enough people watching the polls? Is there fatigue? Are we actually voting over a period of days? And that might lead to additional opportunities for different ways to count without anybody watching, et cetera. So that was just an interesting comment. Right. Thank you,
And
Karen.
We've also got this group called Shut Down DC. It's a George Soros funded operation. They're planning to have at least 10,000 people surround the Capitol White House area of DC and shut down traffic, shut down everything until Trump leaves the White House or announces he won't, try to declare himself the victor before the votes are counted. It's just insane. Mm-hmm. So that could be, a ticking time bomb there if you got 10,000 lunatics in the Capitol trying to shut things down and intimidate lawmakers, Congress members. They talk about that in their online flyers. It's really disgusting what they're planning and what they have in store for us.
I wanted to just tell everybody, if they see me looking over here all the time, I'm watching the Amy Coney Barrett nomination. When they finally get a final vote, I'm going to break in and have breaking news. Okay. Sorry, Leo, go ahead.
Now, let's not forget, it's not just the presidential race that we have our eyes on next week. We have some very big Senate races.
We do.
And we could not see just how important this is, and it could not be reflected any more than it is right now with the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett. The Senate holds a slim 53-47 Republican to Democrat ratio. So the GOP has a 3-seat majority. We cannot afford to lose any seats, folks. We really can't. And yet Democrats are saying they're going to take the Senate, and a lot of Real Clear Politics and groups like that are predicting that they could very well take the Senate because the Republicans have more seats that they're trying to defend than Democrats do. One of those is in Georgia. And I wanted to take a closer look at that seat where we have Jon Ossoff, a Democrat, as radical as they come, who's totally on board with every single Democrat wish list item, from defunding police and gun grabs, taxpayer-paid abortion on demand up through the ninth week of pregnancy, tax hikes, regulation increase, you name it, Green New Deal, this guy's for it. But he doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag among Georgia voters just how radical he is. Well, Project Veritas infiltrated his campaign and went undercover and exposed the game plan. Can we play that video, Mary?
Yep, sure. Hold on one second. See if I can get it started here.
He has to win this election. He's not going to win the election as a progressive. And that's basically it. At a certain point, we have to wait for the boomers to die off.
Do you think the Georgians are stupid enough to not?
Yeah. You can spread that to your other progressive friends. Keep this on the low key.
Here we go again. A politician. This time it is U.S. Senate candidate Jon Ossoff in Georgia lying to the voters. His campaign staffer tells our journalist Ossoff is doing it because it is the only way he can get elected.
On the surface, he tries to portray himself as like left of moderate, so that all the Georgians, you know, all the not us Georgians, but all like the rednecks and all that stuff, will be like, oh, he's kind of cool, but he's not like so far to the left that I'm not cool with that. But deep down, he's like low key like progressive. So it's something to keep you pumped up, especially because I know he's gonna win. So we know he's gonna win, right?
I know. That's why I'm such a fan. Like,
Yeah.
I know he's
gonna do what it takes to help us out. I know it's gonna take, you know, the rest of the states as well, because change doesn't happen with just one person.
I mean, as long, like, do you think like the Georgians are stupid enough to like not
Yeah.
like just get him in, and then like once he's in, that's
Yeah.
when the magic happens there.
Totally.
That's so encouraging.
Yeah.
I knew it. Like, I was just like, yes.
But you can spread that to like your, you know, other progressive friends. Just keep this on low key.
Oh, why?
Because we, just like I'm talking about, like, we also want to appeal to the moderates as well. But, you know, I said to help you out.
And John is genuine to a certain point, but he can't show his like true self like 100% of the time. So that's the tough part about campaigning in purple or like red states. Yeah. Because the people here are not open-minded in like a overall sense, right? Like you have like there's like maybe 40% of the population who are 45, but then, you know, the rest are of a different breed or a different kind.
Sounds like the Ossoff campaign has a pretty low opinion of the voters in Georgia. Maybe the voters should take a closer look at Ossoff. And by the way, what is a, quote, low-key progressive, unquote?
I was running as progressive within like the 5th district of Georgia, which is like all black. That's the one that John Lewis, the civil rights activist, was running for.
You were absolutely right.
He could win that, you know, pretty much a landslide, but he wants to go for senator. Senator, you have to appeal the whole state. Our whole state isn't progressive. It's like more moderate, right?
I'm super progressive.
Okay.
And so
Like, what do you mean, like, how progressive?
I recently did, one of my friends sent me like this poll, and I did it, and it called me a libertarian socialist.
Libertarian.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds so awesome.
Not that you know, not that John is one. It's just that my policy or my beliefs are even.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, just like,
Yeah.
I think he's a low-key progressive, and I'm very happy about it.
He's what?
I like to think that he is, in fact, a low-key progressive, and
He is low-key progressive. I can say that's a fact.
A low-key progressive. Wow. That was an
Stupid
amazing video.
Georgians.
Yeah, stupid rednecks. What will they think? Oh, he's kind of cool. Oh, you can spread that to your other progressive friends, but just keep it low key. Wink, wink. You know, and they even talked at the beginning about the boomers need to die off, you know. Really amazing stuff, but I guess it shouldn't be that surprising because this is how progressives run in every red state. We've seen them get in, and like even in Alabama, you know, I mean, they have a progressive senator right now. So it is not beyond the question that this guy could beat David Perdue, who is the Republican incumbent, and Georgia could end up with its version of AOC. You know, the male version of AOC. He's young, he's dashing, he's progressive, and he makes us all want to puke. But anyway.
Leo, one quick item on the
Yeah.
Senate. I think the Senate really is in play because the 17th Amendment 100 years ago really screwed over the constitutional founders. It basically made a statewide election of senators. That's not what was supposed to happen in the original Constitution. So it was amended, it was legally amended so that statewide votes. So you've got Detroit, where poll watchers have a terrible time. You've got Atlanta, you've got the large cities where you've got massive amounts of vote, tremendous opportunity for voter fraud, and the popular vote is basically determined by that combination of large urban cities and potential fraud. So you could, in fact, no matter what happens at the top of the ticket, end up with statewide elected senators who are basically low-key progressives which could completely flip the Senate. So that's a real concern.
Yes.
We need to make
What
sure
is a
people.
low-key progressive, Dick? What do you think that is? What?
Well, I think Abdul El-Sayed back in Michigan a couple of years ago was a low-key progressive. These are people who lie. These are
Yes.
people who are very progressive,
Okay.
maybe even Sharia compliant advocates. Abdul,
I don't think you have to pre-qualify them with low-key. All progressives lie.
right. Well, the word low-key is the lie. Whether they lie or not, the term low-key is the actual lie. So one of the
Gotcha.
questions people need to ask themselves is, do you want to vote for somebody you know is lying? How can you trust that person after they're elected to not do some harm to you if they're lying right up front and getting elected by the people that they hoodwink?
Good point.
Yes. And it's a flip side of that is in Michigan, whereas in Georgia, we have an incumbent Republican running against a low-key progressive Democrat. In Michigan, we have a low-key progressive Democrat, Senator Peters, who's the incumbent. And John James, the Republican, is running against him, trying to flip that seat from Democrat to Republican. Dick, how do you see James's chances in that race?
Well, I'm a little bit distant from Michigan right now, so I need to qualify it. To be honest with you, I think the two Democratic senators in Michigan are locked solid with Whitmer behind them and all the energy that goes on in Michigan. I would be surprised if John James, if he can make it close, that's interesting, but I think Peters will win.
I'm going to go with James in an upset in that one.
Wow. Okay.
I think so too.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. I'd like to share an article now with you from today's issue of The Federalist. That's a great conservative online magazine. I'm not going to go over the whole article with you, but I wanted to just flash up the headline and maybe look at a couple of the points. And you will be able to read it for yourselves maybe later tonight or tomorrow. It's a very important article. It affirms what I reported in my recent article about the coming dark winter. On second thought, if you could, is it up?
I can pull up the dark winter if you want.
No, let's pull up the
Federalist
Federalist one. It's titled Seven Leftist Threats of Political Terror Coming Whether Trump Wins or Not.
Do you want the actual article?
Let's look at the headline and then just skim through it and maybe look at that former CNN contributor's comment on Twitter.
Okay, I'll find it. Go ahead, Leo.
If anyone thought my dark winter article was too dark, I invite them to read this Federalist article. It will literally chill you to the bone, folks.
Right there to the left, all the way to the left, Dick. The very first article you have up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. There you go.
Go to the headline.
This is the article.
In this article, the author, Stella Morabito, picks out and pinpoints 7 prominent, outspoken Democratic shills. These are mainstream folks, all 7 of them, and points out what they have to say about us conservatives. Most of it is on Twitter. They put this out in the form of tweets. And in every single case, it is just very scary what is in these people's minds in terms of, if Biden wins, what do they expect to happen? What do they want to happen to us Trump supporters? She goes, excuse me, point by point. If you scroll down, let's just look at the names. The first one is a gentleman named Niels Gilman. He is a Twitter agitator. He called for the execution of journalist and former Trump advisor Michael Anton. Anton, as you know, came out with a big article a couple of months ago. It is the title of it in there. I believe it is
The Coming Coup.
Yes, The Coming Coup. That was an article that went literally viral. And he he explained exactly what's likely to happen on election day and beyond. And it was a very honest, fact-based article with some of his opinion mixed in, kind of like I do in my articles. Well, this Niels Gilman said that he should be executed. I kid you not. And so let's move on to the next one. Dick Costolo, I included him in my article a couple days ago. He is the former Twitter CEO who said that certain capitalists should be, quote, lined up against the wall and shot in the coming revolution. Let's move on. Then we come to number 3. If Trump loses, his supporters remain, quote, an existential threat. And that was, I'm not sure who made that particular comment, but you could read this article for yourself. Let's move on to the next one. Number 4, prosecute everyone who supported Trump. Wow. Keith Olbermann. Yes, I included him in my Dark Winter article as well. He is a well-known former cable news pundit. He now has his own podcast. He put a video from his podcast on Twitter where he has 1 million followers and said that they need to be like maggots.
They're maggots.
They need to be chased from the stage.
Right.
Number 5, Trump supporters, quote, must be eradicated from society. Now, this is the one I wanted to read a little more carefully. This is a former CNN contributor, Reza Aslan. So again, we're not just talking about some, outlier basement dweller types. These are people who have had big responsible positions in society, mainstream Democrats calling for the extermination of Trump supporters. Let's read that. He says, after today, there's no longer any room for nuance. The president is a white nationalist terror leader. His supporters, all of them, he puts in all caps, are by definition white nationalist terrorist supporters. The MAGA hat is a KKK hood, and this evil racist scourge must be eradicated from society. Wow.
He's a disturbed individual.
And he's an individual that a lot of people follow and a lot of people respect. So this is dangerous, folks. We cannot take this lightly. We cannot just, say he's just a crazy Democrat. No, this guy right here, just like the others above him in this article, they command thousands, altogether millions of people who listen to them and respect what they say. And so this is why we're going to have a violence problem. This is why we have a brewing civil war in this country, because of irresponsible rhetoric from these and others in our society. You
Leo,
don't see, go ahead.
No, we've got a couple people commenting on this, and I think they're right. And just wanted to throw one out for you to think about. Aren't these death threats that could be prosecuted? And the other one says Reza is a jihadi, and they're absolutely right. But what do you think about them being prosecuted as death threats?
That's a great point about him being a jihadi. Not only does he have a lot of followers, but how many of them are actually armed jihadists ready to go when he gives the word?
Yep.
So this is extremely disturbing, and of course it's prosecutable. I guarantee you, if a conservative put out something half this toxic, this explosive, they would have an FBI agent at their door within 24 hours.
I think they'd have the armed guard, or armed, just like they did to Roger Stone.
Right. They would have a SWAT team at hand. Yep. Exactly. So
sometimes we ask ourselves about, we've got all these hundreds of thousands of armed Americans, legally armed, but do they know each other? Are they organized? Well, we know for a fact that there are 3,400 locations where there are very, very organized people waiting for the imam to tell them to enter the street.
That's right.
Right. And the
So if Risa
scary
is
thing,
connectable with one of, yep.
go ahead, Dick.
Well, no, I'm just saying if Risa has a connection to one or more imams, he can activate with a phone call or a text message people who are organized and are very, very committed to their objective.
Absolutely. And that, you know, as my book Stealth Invasion pointed out, that is one of the biggest reasons why I believe that the that element was imported into our country to begin with. That at the appropriate time, 0 hour as they call it, these cells can be activated against the American population.
And Reza Aslan had to explain himself about a year and a half ago about comments he made about cannibalism. So this man is very dangerous, but if you think about it in the relationship to jihadis, ISIS was eating the hearts of their victims.
Yes.
Many years ago. So
and this tweet has been on Twitter, as you can see right there, since August 4th, 2019. And Twitter never took it down. Twitter never suspended his account. And yet they want to sit there. Mr. Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, I think he's been called to testify, subpoenaed to the Senate. He will sit there in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee and tell them that his company is not biased, that they have these community standards and they just apply them, equally and fairly across the board. BS. And this is proof of it right here. There are tons of these. ISIS themselves, Mary, had Twitter accounts that were never suspended.
And Facebook as well.
Right. And yet we, as conservative, patriotic Americans, we can't even give facts, just raw facts from the CDC about COVID-19 without them getting censored and taken down. It really is remarkable. Couple of examples. The CDC study that 85% of the people who came down with COVID in July were regular mask wearers. You cannot put that on Facebook. They will, and if they allow it all, they'll put one of those warnings that, this contains inaccurate information and, a label on it. So they're labeling our content. They're disparaging us. They're blocking us. They're shadow banning us. They're suspending our accounts. This is why I believe truly we need to keep our Facebook accounts and our Twitter accounts, but we need to start opening accounts on Parler and I don't know, maybe Gab. MeWe, Gab, and Parler, I think, are kind of the big three right now for conservatives.
There's one I haven't fully checked out, but MAGA Book.
Yeah, I never heard of it.
Yeah, so, MAGA Book is out there.
There's tons of them, Mary. There are literally tons of them that most of us have never heard of. And I think that's part of the plan to open. How many of these are actually run by conservatives? I don't know. It could be a plan to open so many of these things that they just scatter us into so many different, paths that we are unable to all connect like we used to on Facebook, back when Facebook, was a legitimate public bulletin board, which is the way it started out, at least in theory. So I don't know, but I just opened a Parler account this week. I probably need to open at least one or two of these others just to have them ready for when they either shut us out of Facebook, just us personally, or just, start, eliminating whole swaths of people, not only you, but all your friends. Because I think communication during what's coming in 2021, which if what we see is correct, 2021 is going to be worse than 2020. We don't want to be out of touch, out of contact with like-minded thinkers. So I really encourage everybody to get on Parler, get on Gab, MeWe. I don't know about these others. Like I said, I'm afraid to advise people to open a ton of these accounts because it just seems like we're then scattering the message. We're defraying the message too much. But we do need to have alternatives. Okay. As I touched on in my last webinar with Sharam, The tactics being used by the left are the same as those our government used in the so-called color revolutions in Eastern Europe and in Iraq. These tactics typically used in the color revolution include harassment, censorship, and intimidation. Sound familiar? By whatever means is necessary. Tucker Carlson last week reported that NBC News has hired a willing accomplice who's carrying out that type of hit job on conservatives. Her name is Brandy Zadranaski. Can we call up that article, please?
Well, there's her picture. We have her picture for that. And I'll
there is Brandy. Doesn't she look nice? Brandy. Her specialty is investigating outspoken Trump supporters at the local or national level and then feeding information that she digs up on them to other media apparatchiks who run hit pieces on them. Isn't that nice? Yes, what a wonderful person is Brandy. Look at her there. You can see how they will use these same techniques later on to launch violent attacks on people's homes and businesses once the Civil War begins in earnest. I look for it to be more like pinprick attacks, folks. Unlike the random violence that we saw in May and June of this summer, when it starts to heat up after the election, yes, there's going to be people out in the streets, but they have data on us now, okay? They have data on you and they have data on me. This woman, Brandy, is a perfect example of what they're doing. She can use her expertise in scouring the media to find out exactly where the Trump supporters are, what they do for a living, where do they shop? When they shop at Amazon, what do they buy? She can find it out. Have you made too many trips to Amazon to buy ammo lately? Brandy will know it. Have you been going to Trump rallies? Putting it on, maybe mentioned it on Facebook at any time? Brandy will know it. So they will be able to know who you are and where you live, and then they can call out the dogs to attack you personally in your house if they want to.
I would say practice your Second Amendment rights.
I think that's good advice, Mary.
You know, it's interesting that one of the sites that's housing the names of Trump donors, names, addresses, and dollar amounts with a map, interactive map for the entire country, the company that's behind that has offices in China.
Right. It's called Donald Trump Watch.
Right.
The database. I included it in my last article on the dark winter.
Yep.
Exactly. That goes right along with the reason I'm focusing on Brandy is she is the only one I knew of who's doing this same thing that I didn't have room to fit in my article because it was already too long. But people need to read my article on the dark winter if they haven't already, and they'll see the rest of them. One of which is, like Dick mentioned, Donald Trump Watch, where a far left group funded out of China has set up a database to find out who has donated money to President Trump. And all you have to do is punch in an address, anybody's address, and it'll tell you if they've donated and how much they have donated to President Trump. And then again, they just call out the dogs, attack them, harass them, possibly kill them. I'm serious, folks. I don't want to scare you, but we do need to be prepared. I think at the very least, we're looking at targeted harassment here. People gathered outside your house, protesting with signs, maybe blocking your driveway, just making your life a holy living hell. That's a possibility, or it could get even worse. It could devolve into outright violence against you or your family. This is the country we live in now. I'm sorry, but this is the reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Members of Congress, conservatives, are already dealing with this sort of thing. We saw how they treated Rand Paul as he was coming out with his wife from the Republican convention. They did the same thing to Dan Bongino and his wife, trying to walk from the convention to their hotel. They're going to bring it to our houses and our neighborhoods next. Mark my words. I need to take a sip of water.
Well, we've got a couple of comments in terms of the social media. I'll throw that in while you're taking your drink of water. We had an
Okay.
offer, somebody telling us about Brighteon.social, replaces Facebook, Twitter, and is apparently opening up YouTube and expanding its services. So check that out. And we've got another one asking what would stop them from shutting down Parler and the rest of the ones that are not blocking us, Parler and those. Why wouldn't they be silenced? Well, I think if we get the Biden administration, Biden, Harris, Biden, whoever you want to call it, I think that's possible. They would shut them down.
Excellent point, Mary. I agree 100%.
And again, I think one thing to keep in mind is eventually we're all going to be trying to protect ourselves locally. We're going to be trying to find 5, 10, 25 people somewhere nearby that we can work together with and help, if either in a violent situation or even just in a support situation if it's not violent. And in order to do that, we may have to go back to old school things like non-internet communication,
Right.
ham radios, etc. So it may sound, well, anyway, people need to think about it. How
I think ham radios are a great investment and of your time and money.
Somebody
Anybody,
says pigeons.
yes, anyone who has the time and just a little bit of money to buy a ham radio and learn how to use it, I would advise them to do so. You will not be sorry.
I think this is an
And we're
example. Go ahead, Mary.
Sorry, we're even getting recommendations, use a PO box instead of your current, your actual. That would help distribute some of where you're physically located.
So I guess I would make the comment, if you can now look up your zip code and find other people that you don't even know who donated to Donald Trump, they're using that to incite people to think of them as racist. On the other hand, you could look it up and perhaps think of them as potential allies. You may need people, somebody's got a skill with ham radios, it teaches everybody else. Somebody else knows how to acquire access to food without having a vaccine. So this whole notion of finding 20 people in your area that you don't know, that you need to know because they're like-minded. Well, maybe there's a reverse way to use this map. If nothing else, reaching out locally, because we may get disconnected on a national level. We may be, in fact, disconnected as a way for them to come and scatter us. So we need to find people nearby that we can work with.
And them working off this data is what's so concerning, because they know too much about us. They know who the gun owners are.
Oh, sure.
So, if you're not a gun owner, they may just try to harass you, whatever. If you are a gun owner, they're probably less likely to harass you, but more likely to come in with somebody, with the jihadists or somebody like that, who's trained and skilled in weaponry, and to confront you then more violently. So just don't assume that they don't know. Don't assume that you have anonymity anymore in the modern American society.
That's right. And
that's,
I'll tell you,
I guess that's the takeaway. Yeah, go ahead.
Ham radio classes are very difficult. I've taken them.
Are they?
Very hard.
Wow.
You've almost got to be an electrical engineer to understand it all. Maybe it's
really
just me.
And you're pretty technical minded, so yeah.
I am.
Wow.
Okay, somebody actually made an interesting comment about this whole notion of locally connecting and trying to survive and be under the radar. And somebody actually used the word underground railway for those of us who need to support each other or resettle elsewhere. I haven't seen underground railway in a while. I think it's kind of significant. Gwen used that. Thank you, Gwen.
Yes, thank you, Gwen. That's great information, and we could probably do a whole show on how to develop something like that. I've often thought about, if things got really bad, like really bad, the thing to do might be to you and your family and maybe your neighbors or somebody, whoever might have a big RV, just, take off in that and be continuously on the move. I would think that would be safer than staying in one location.
Not really. Because think about all the roads that they block. If it's going to come down to that, they're going to be blocking the roads, and that RV.
Oh, you would definitely have to take back roads everywhere. Yeah.
And you can't in some of the larger ones.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking, if they know where you are and you receive and say you were to receive intelligence that you're on the list. Well,
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we
yeah.
don't want to, we don't want to forget, because of the new list, which I believe is called Donald Trump, is it called Trump Watch, Donald Trump Watch? Is that the name of that? Somebody wanted to know the link.
Oh, I told him it was on Leo's article.
Yeah, it is on the article, which is on leohohmann.com. But,
Right.
you know, we have another
Yeah,
prominent
it's
list.
the top article right now on leohohmann.com.
We have not referred to the big list that was the list before this new database list. And that some people that we know are on, that's called the Southern Poverty Law Center group of haters. So bringing that back into focus on top of what we're talking about now.
It's a great website.
Right, you put those two lists together, you've really got a lot of haters out there that are going to come out of the quote supposed haters. Some of us are on the list, and I just want to remind everybody how terrible these lists are. There have been actually deaths associated with people that took the Southern Poverty Law Center list very seriously, and there were killed. I believe there were deaths. I forgot the name of the organization. So we're not fooling around, people. We just want you to be alert and aware and prepare. Focus on the election and focus on the aftermath as well. Just be prepared. Use common sense. It's a different world. I can't believe we're having this conversation, by the way.
Oh, I know.
Come on, this is crazy, but it's not crazy.
No,
Well,
I
we've
mean,
got somebody asking, I wonder if either of you, and I had not heard this, said that they read an article that a few days before the election that the internet could be shut down. Thoughts? I had not heard any of that. I don't know the answer to that.
I have not heard anything to that nature, but nothing would surprise me.
Yeah.
Well, the other phenomenon that we haven't had this year that we still could have before, during, or after, and that would be the economic catastrophe that is manipulatable. So people need to be, that wouldn't be surprising to me at this point. Again, one of Donald's accomplishments, of course, is the economy. Anything that could be done to wreck the economy or scare people would be a factor, and that could happen even between now and the election or afterwards. Again, any kind of chaos would work to the favor of the people that are planning to take advantage of chaos, no matter how it happens.
All right, moving on. In Michigan, we have more left-wing chicanery going on. The leftists there have been targeting the police chief in Shelby Township, which is a middle-class suburb outside of Detroit in Macomb County, where I was born. Macomb County.
I was in Oakland County.
Yep. We see how the leftist media works hand in hand with the leftist mob to create a false narrative about a person, in this case, the police chief, who is a patriotic American. Now, I want to take a close look at this article in today's Detroit News. It's very interesting in the way it's structured. Let's take a look at it. Let's go up to the title there. Detroit Breathe. That is a Black Lives Matter organization. Detroit Will Breathe. They demanded that the Shelby Six must be released from jail. So you look at the headline. Okay, you don't know that it involves Black Lives Matter, right? They just refer to it as Detroit Will Breathe, like it's just some organically formed local group. And they're making a demand that 6 people in Shelby Township should be released from jail. Okay, so as a reader, you're not going to bring too much to the table there. You're just going to take it at face value. I can hardly read, it's so small, so I'm going to try to call it up on my computer here.
Okay.
Here we go. So we start reading into the body of the article, and it says, Detroit Will Breathe is calling on officials to drop the charges against their members stemming from a Saturday night protest and free them from jail. The group rallied at noon Sunday in front of the Macomb County Circuit Court in Mount Clemens after they said Shelby Township police informed them that those arrested Saturday could face felony charges. Okay. Of the 10 arrested, 4 were released last night and 6 are still in custody at the Macomb County Jail, said Detroit Will Breathe organizer Nakia Wallace. Tristan Taylor, another organizer, is one of those still in custody. The group claimed authorities strip searched a woman in public during the protest. Police denied strip searching the woman, saying she took off her own clothes. And so, okay, so now it starts getting interesting. You know, there's a little conflict going on here. Quote, what we're demanding is the release of all the Shelby Six. We're demanding that the charges be dropped against everyone, and we're demanding that the officers who participated in that illegal strip search, that they be fired and they be charged with a crime. So isn't that typical of what they always do? The cops are doing their job. Of course, we don't know if they were doing their job correctly so far by reading this article. All we know so far is that some people were protesting and the cops intervened and strip searched one of the women. And so let's read on. Protesters took to the streets of Shelby Township on Saturday to demonstrate against the township's police chief, Robert Schillide, who was suspended in June for making inflammatory comments about Black Lives Matter protesters under an alias on social media. Isn't it interesting? They don't tell us what he said. Okay, he used inflammatory comments. Inflammatory by whose standards? The Detroit News standards? Black Lives Matter standards? We don't know. My guess is he just pointed out the truth about this group, Black Lives Matter, probably said they were Marxists. Maybe he said that they were trying to destroy the nuclear family. Who knows? But they don't tell us. The Detroit News doesn't think it. They want to just keep us guessing, keep us in suspicion about this evil police chief. Okay, so the story continues. Sunday, the 150th day of protests, they marched through Shelby Township streets lined with Trump 2020 signs and back the blue flags to show solidarity with their peers, chanting, quote, free the Shelby Six and drop the charges. Okay, those of us who are awake to what the situation of reality really is right now, that paragraph should jump out at us big time. We have Black Lives Matter targeting a middle-class suburban neighborhood lined with Trump 2020 signs. Okay, folks, that should jump out at you right there. That is a big red flag. They are taking their, quote, peaceful protests, no longer keeping them in the inner cities of Detroit, Minneapolis, LA, New York, Portland, Seattle, Atlanta. They're not so concerned about the city, inner cities now. They're taking this gig out to the suburbs. The folks flying the Trump flags and the Trump signs, okay? It's in your face. So the violent protests always start with peaceful protests. It starts with harassing. It starts with intimidation. It eventually escalates to a more violent situation. That's what we saw happen in the big city protests back in May and June, right? Okay, so let's continue on with our biased Detroit News story. Excuse me. It says, Detroit Will Breathe has also been rallying followers on social media to call and email the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office to release protesters and drop any charges against them. An arraignment will be held Monday, that was today, for those arrested. Okay, so the same time that they're agitating to get this police chief fired, they're agitating to get their fellow rioters out of prison and drop the charges. And then we have a quote from the Black Lives Matter guy. It says, we were just met at the beginning with a heavy police force, and they decided to rush our march and beat and assault people. Bingo! That's another red flag. If cops were beating people, don't you think that would have been in the headline? If cops were just randomly, they just randomly took up against these peaceful protesters and started beating them, assaulting them. But the Detroit News quotes this guy as if he's telling the truth. Okay, so we still have not gotten to the bottom of exactly what happened. In fact, we're halfway through the article now, maybe a little more. And we, as a non-woke reader who just picked this up, we don't know anything about Black Lives Matter, who they really are. We don't know anything about the police. We're just taking everything at face value. What do we know now? They strip searched a woman and they're randomly beating people up. Next paragraph. As protesters were marching down Van Dyke on Saturday, they were met by police in riot gear and shields. Some protesters were assaulted and beaten by police, and one woman was strip searched down to her underwear in the street, Detroit Will Breathe said in a press release. Okay, I'm reading that and I'm thinking all along that that's just fact. But when it says it's Detroit Will Breathe, which is an affiliate of Black Lives Matter, we find out at the end of the paragraph, that's just them talking in a press release. Again, if this actually happened the way Black Lives Matter folks say it happened, it would have been in the headline. And they would have probably had video and pictures and everything. Okay. The activist group said 2 people were taken to the hospital for severe concussions after being arrested and assaulted by police. Okay, it just keeps getting worse, right? While on scene, one of the arrestees escaped her flex cuffs in the rear of a patrol car. Okay, now the truth starts coming out. This woman who we were told the police strip searched right in the middle of the street down to her panties, we now hear the police side of the story, and they say that she was put in the car and she stripped her own clothes off as she wiggled out of her handcuffs and while sitting in the back seat. Quote, it was reported on social media that officers strip searched her, and that was completely false, the police said. And guess what? They say they have it all on video and they're going to release it to the public. I hope they do.
Thank God for digital cameras, huh?
Yeah. Okay. And so we finally get to the final end of the article, and it says, according to police, officers met with protest organizers at about 1:30 p.m. Saturday and advised them to stay on the sidewalk and not to block or enter the roadway. Okay, this bit of information here should have been up at the top of the story. They put it at the very bottom of the story. How many people read to the end of every story in a newspaper? Probably about 10% or less. So 90%, and this is coming from me, a former newspaper editor. I've read all the data on this. People don't read to the end of articles. They read the headline, they read the first paragraph or two. They might go as far as halfway into the article. They do not read to the very end. Only 10% or less do. And you have to do that. You have to read the end of this story to find out what actually happened. The cops gave them a permit. They said, stay on the sidewalk. Don't block the road, don't block the traffic, because in this same area, 14, 15 mile road, 23 mile road, these Black Lives Matter people have been actually laying down in the street and blocking traffic. It's been going on for months. And so the cops, rightly so, has said, hey, guess what, folks? You had your First Amendment rights, but it doesn't involve laying down and blocking the streets. And so they violated the order to stay out of the street. And that's when cops started arresting them. And maybe they did, bash a couple of heads of people who resisted arrest. They did not randomly, willy-nilly go off, start beating people. They did not strip search any women. It's a complete bunk, but you wouldn't know it by this article unless you read all the way to the end. And I think it's a pathetic, disgraceful excuse for local journalism.
Breaking news. We now have Amy Coney Barrett confirmed as the next Supreme Court Justice, 52-43. Woohoo! Good going. God bless America.
What was the vote? 52, 40?
52 to 4. I'm sorry, 52 to 44. It says
Okay.
on C-SPAN. Somebody else wrote
So it
in.
was only what? Susan Collins who voted the only Republican?
I wasn't listening because I was trying to listen here, but I'll have to go back and look. It doesn't.
I'm guessing it was Susan Collins of Maine.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Because even Murkowski in Alaska said she was going to vote
That's
in
right.
favor of, even though she's pro-choice, she was going to vote for the pro-life Supreme Court justice.
Leo, I think you talked about.
Oh, wait, it's still counting. I'm sorry, 52 to 45. So I thought it was done when I saw this.
It'll probably
All
end
right.
up 52,
So
46.
it was
Yeah.
breaking news. It was, you broke it before it was broken, but you were there.
I broke it.
She broke it. All right.
All
Leo,
right. I'll give you a final count shortly. Sorry, go ahead.
Leo, this is like play-by-play. We have a play-by-play announcer in the room. Leo, you know this territory. You know the streets and the corners and the intersection. You know that the town next to it is run by the third largest city in Michigan. It's called Shelby Township, and you know that the mayor of Shelby Township is a Republican. And you know.
Are you talking about Sterling Heights?
I meant to say Sterling Heights. What did I say?
Shelby Township.
I meant to say Sterling Heights is the town next to it.
That's the third or fourth largest city, right?
Yes, and that's run by a GOP Republican named Michael Taylor that we know is endorsing Joe Biden. This same man invited 2 months ago Black Lives Matter to come out to Macomb to a very big intersection of Shelby and Sterling Heights, specifically to demonstrate. So we have in the case of Michigan, we actually have progressive Republicans calling them into the suburbs, building their presence, inviting them probably to visit with school boards, et cetera, et cetera. So we have some people working. We have low-key progressives actually in Macomb County, and I know you know that really well.
Absolutely. So, what are your thoughts, Dick, on that article? Was it just me, or is it as despicable as it gets in terms of journalistic malpractice?
Well, I think you're the professional, so you would feel it more maybe than I would. You would notice the detail. By the way, Leo, after how many decades of professional work that you've done, send a resume into the Detroit News, Leo. What happens to you? What happens to you, Leo? The consummate author, the consummate writer, the person who gives so much of yourself every time you're on with us. What would the Detroit News, how long would they evaluate your resume?
It would probably go directly into the recycling bin.
Okay.
I do know of one reporter there who's a pretty decent guy. He keeps his head down. He's like the only conservative, I think, real conservative at the paper. And he's confided in me that he has to keep his head down or he will lose his job. And keep in mind, folks, that the Detroit News, the Detroit area has two daily papers, Detroit News and Detroit Free Press. And the Detroit News was historically the conservative paper.
Right.
And so, like every other so-called conservative mainstream daily newspaper in America, they've all gone liberal over the last 10, 12 years. Every last one of them.
So again, when you look at the propaganda in this news article and you look at the content, you should also remember that there are people reading this who are also being encouraged to take action against white supremacists, against people that support Donald Trump. So this ties back into the earlier comments, Leo. This is just typically fuel for the people who are standing by waiting to be called into the streets in some other part of town, some other part of the county or other part of the country. And I think you're highlighting this just as an example. There are examples all over the country like this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Just one of a million examples
Yep.
of how the leftist mob, organized, funded, professionally organized and funded by Soros, Steyer, AOC with her Sunrise Movement. There's you got Barack Obama with his Organizing for Action. You got all these professional community organizers with tons and tons and tons of money who can command armies of demonstrators, peaceful or otherwise, they have them at their disposal, ready to call out into the streets and even target certain people, certain neighborhoods at the drop of a button. It really is getting creepy. But let's move on now.
Leo, I think we've got a
Final vote.
bulletin.
Final vote. I was going to
Bulletin.
write it up. Shoot. 52 to 48.
52
It's the
to
final
48.
count. She is confirmed. I heard it straight from McConnell's.
So she
mouth.
is going to be sworn in tonight, I heard, by Justice Thomas.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
52 to 48. Woo-hoo!
Very good.
Sorry.
Great news.
How do you really feel about it, Mary?
Oh, it's just another day.
Okay.
Right. So if we can keep the Senate, folks,
We gotta.
Please.
this is what it leads to.
You gotta have the Senate.
This is the most pro-life justice, I think, probably in the history of the court.
Yep. I
Amy
think so
Coney
too.
Barrett. Committed Christian, Catholic, 100%.
Oh, this is even better. On Hillary's birthday, no less. Happy birthday, Hillary. Woohoo!
Yes.
Good point. I love it. Thank you, John.
So if Trump were to somehow get in a second term and we can hold the Senate, I think we can look forward to at least one more, maybe two more being of these Supreme Court seats being turned over in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that would just be unbelievable.
Isn't it?
Yes. So it's almost like things are within reach, but yet they're smacking the hand down and trying to use corruption and violence to win what they cannot win in terms of, legal, fair, rule of law, American, policy making. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about bracing for the dark winter. We suspect this term, which was thrown out by Biden at the last debate on Thursday, had double meanings because the globalists have been very fond of this term, dark winter. Since 2001 or 2, they have been using this term. In fact, there was an Operation Dark Winter that was held on the East Coast back about 15 years ago, in which they game planned out, as you can see there, a reaction to a biological warfare smallpox. It was a viral smallpox, extremely contagious strain of smallpox. It ended with lockdowns, draconian lockdowns, rioting in the streets, and military intervention. And as you can see there, it said that the title in the Foreign Policy magazine, which is a very elitist magazine that all the globalists read, the title of the article was "America's Pandemic War Games Did Not End Well." Okay, and from there I go on to discuss a lot of the ground that we've already covered. But while Trump said that we must learn to live with the virus, Biden countered at that debate by saying people are learning to die with it. Another, I think, very important, almost code type language. And by the way, Biden did not just say these things off the cuff. He did not just slip these things out. He repeated them, and he's been repeating them every day since the end of the debate. Just today, I heard him speaking in Pennsylvania, and he said, people are learning to die with it. And he talked about the dark winter again. So they're really ramping up this propaganda to a high boil, folks. It's all they can talk about on the media. We're all going to die of COVID, the young, the old, the sick, the healthy. Yahoo News today, their top story was about an NFL player, and it said, young, healthy, and strong, COVID didn't care. He's been in the hospital twice with COVID-related problems. They gave no details. They did not say anything that would back up the fact that he was indeed healthy. We don't know what medication he could have been taking that would have possibly compromised his immune system. But they're making a big deal out of this NFL player who is, I don't know, 26, 27 years old and came down with COVID. They gave no details on exactly how sick he is. In fact, they said they can't even confirm that it is COVID that he is suffering from. So it was a really just more propaganda. We've had Fauci this week coming out saying we need a national mandatory mask law. The media is hyperventilating. The disinformation war is getting just as insane as it was back in March, April, and May before rioting took center stage. Now we're going back to COVID, folks. Of course, we know this has nothing to do with health. It's about creating a crisis that allows them to collapse the global economy and launch what they call the Great Reset. But more conservatives are waking up to this. I've been writing about it for 7 months now, but we're seeing others like Glenn Beck delving into it, informing bigger audiences, and that's very encouraging. I just want to say that the Great Reset is all-encompassing and more accurately described as the Great Transformation. It's not just about climate change. It's about implementing every facet of the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This includes ramping up the surveillance state, replacing patriotic local cops with globalized UN indoctrinated cops. Remember the Strong Cities Network. Replacing hard currencies with digital money based on blockchain technology. Expanding the hate speech laws that target conservative Christians and Jews. Implementing mandatory vaccines and merging the digitization of health records with your ID and issuing digital passports that will allow you to board an airplane, attend a large venue event, and shop at a chain grocery store, department store, etc. So let's take a look at one of these that I decided to concentrate on tonight. That is the surveillance state. I found a very disturbing article today that was published August 10th, 2020 in the Farm Journal. The title was "Government Cameras Hidden on Private Property?" ? Welcome to open fields. Let's wait for Dick to get it up. There it is. Welcome to open fields. What does that mean? We'll take a look. Hang on a second. This article contains a chilling account of a farming family in Tennessee. Their name is the Rainwaters family. They discovered their land was secretly being monitored by government cameras placed in trees on their property. They owned a 136-acre farm. This was all done without a search warrant, and it's being approved. It's already been approved by the U.S. Supreme Court. Yes, you heard that right. The Supreme Court ruled many years ago that the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches and seizures only applies to your dwelling and the immediate area surrounding it. So if you live on more than a half-acre lot, or maybe an acre or two, maybe as this guy does, 136 acres, you're not protected against unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. SCOTUS ruled this in 1924, but that was before they had high-tech gadgetry like they have now with these little hidden cameras that they can place in secret places up in trees and you never know they're there. And there are a few states that have pushed back against this. Mississippi, Montana, New York, Oregon, and Vermont have protections against this in their state constitutions. if you live in any other state, you need to lobby your lawmakers to update their constitution to put in a provision that bans the government from monitoring your land with hidden cameras without search warrants. They call this the open fields theory, the legal scholars do, where, yeah, you're entitled to privacy, but only inside your home and the immediate area around it, not the acreage. This happened in Benton County, Tennessee. I know we have some Tennessee listeners on board tonight, more than likely. Maybe you could tell us more about Benton County. I imagine it's a very rural county, and this Rainwater family has been literally terrorized by the government, the Tennessee State Department of Wildlife Resources. They have sent agents several times onto their property, just at will. They don't get a search warrant. They just didn't like something they saw on the private secret camera, and so they get in their big rough and tumble SUVs and invade the land. And they do this by claiming that possible illegal hunting has been going on your land. It's really ridiculous.
Leo, they actually stormed the guy's house and knocking on the door to get the camera back. They put the camera on this man's property. And
he discovered them and took them down. Right.
They discovered that the camera wasn't there. And then they loaded up their, quote, almost SWAT team to come get the camera. They rescued the camera.
Exactly. So we're not going to go through this article. It's long, but I wanted everyone to be aware of it and to get the title, Google it, call it up on your own computer and read it tomorrow.
Leo,
it's really eye-opening. Go ahead, Dick.
A comment on this is as we're going to go into 2021, we're going to see a lot of individual freedoms that we believe are in the Constitution violated. What we need to focus on is the fact that state constitutions are really, really important, and most of us don't know what's in our state constitution. So this is a really good opportunity. By the way, there's an organization called the Institute on the Constitution that we're newly involved with, Institute on the Constitution, and they have training materials, and they emphasize how important it is to know your state constitution. So look for more work on that. I think it's going to be really important as people take our freedoms away. We're going to have to find what we've got in our own state that we can depend on.
Absolutely, Dick. And apparently this is one of those cases where the Supreme Court a long time ago, 1924, took up a case and ruled that, as we already explained about this, you're dwelling in the immediate area being protected by the Fourth Amendment, but not any extended acreage. But like I said, this was before today's high-tech society where governments can intrude all over the place with their little secret eyes and ears. And it's a big issue now. So there's only a few states that have it in their constitution that says this type of activity is not allowed. And if you don't live in one of those states, like Dick said, then your state constitution has a real weakness that needs to be updated. And it doesn't matter if you post no trespassing signs, private land signs, that means nothing to the state. They will just trample all over your land and as if they own it. And it really is something to be concerned about, but you need to take it up with your lawmakers. Okay, moving on from the surveillance technique of the coming Great Reset to our food supply. We heard Joe Biden talk about phasing out fossil fuels in Thursday night's debate with President Trump. Well, that's not all he wants to phase out, folks. He and his globalist buddies also want to phase out and change the way we eat, phasing out the consumption of meat. The so-called Eat Lancet Commission was established in 2019 as the first of a series of initiatives on nutrition led by The Lancet, which is a well-known medical journal. This was followed by the Commission on the Global Syndemic. Notice they're calling it a syndemic, not a pandemic, sin, C-Y-N, demic. And that's an all-encompassing term that they're throwing out there now that is going to include everything, not just pandemics and possible global outbreaks of viruses, but your health, your personal health, obesity, undernutrition, and also climate change, all under one heading called the sin-demic. They want to change the way we eat, eliminating meat and other things deemed harmful to the health of the planet. And you can see from that graphic there, all the things they want to regulate. And it says the Eat Lancet Commission, let's go back to that for a second, defines a reference diet that meets nutritional requirements within planetary boundaries to minimize damage to Earth's systems. Global adoption of the reference diet by 2050 will require worldwide consumption of red meat and sugar to reduce by more than 50%, and consumption of nuts, fruits, vegetables, and legumes to increase by 100%, accommodating significant regional differences in needs. Okay, so here you have it, folks. These globalist muckety-mucks telling us how we should eat and how we should feed our families. Meat is bad. They want to phase out cattle ranching. And remember, Bill Gates is heavily invested in what? Lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat, where they will grow meat in a test tube or a Petri dish. It's really disgusting. He's pumped tens of millions of dollars into that. So he knows this is coming, okay? The Lancet, a global world-renowned medical journal, knows that it's coming. The World Economic Forum, which is promoting the Great Reset, AKA the Great Transformation, knows that it's coming. They got your life all planned out for you, folks, and you don't even know it. It's really amazing.
Leo, let me see if I can read this graph properly. So what I'm hearing is we are the purple line, and we would have to reduce our meat consumption from wherever we are right now. We would be allowed no more than 100% of our meat allocation to save the planet because of the carbon situation or whatever that's all about. We would have to reduce our meat consumption to be inside this vertical 100% line.
Right.
We are 1, 2, 3, or 5, 6 times more meat consumed than we will be allowed in the future. It's also looking like we're going to have to if we want to replace that with any kind of protein, we're going to have to increase nuts,
right,
and things like that. They're going to actually mandate. We've got too many eggs. We eat too much poultry. Our dairy is above the limit. We're going to be managed to this level. This is called, again, we sometimes say free people are not equal and equal people are not free. So we're going to have to be equal by giving up our freedom to eat all of this delicious red meat.
Exactly.
Is that what it means?
We've got a comment that says, makes me want to go get a Whopper. I love it. We've got a great audience today.
Yeah. See, they want to manage our lives from cradle to grave.
But we think they're nuts, but they're really, really serious.
They are 100% serious. Hey,
these are cows. This is cows. All of this is cows polluting the atmosphere and ending the earth because of their carbon emissions. Am I right? Is that what they mean?
Absolutely.
So we have to get rid of cows and pigs and chickens.
Yes.
Oh my.
This is going to cause manufactured food shortages, guaranteed. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And so
fear and control, guys.
And lest anyone think that this is just liberals spouting, utopian, meaningless, pie in the sky, la la land stuff.
Hey,
remember when the Green New Deal was first proposed by AOC? What did everybody do?
Oh, they all jumped on board.
They laughed.
Well,
our side,
yeah.
We laughed. Now we have a man running for president, Joe Biden, who has adopted the Green New Deal as part of his platform.
So-
I'm telling you, folks, you can't make this up. Do not laugh at it. These people are serious.
So we're going to have a food czar. One of the czars would be in charge of what we eat. Mr. Bloomberg, 10 years ago, limited the size of a cup of soda in New York. That kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. He was ahead of his time.
There we go.
Right, right. So yeah, let's show a couple of those other graphics that this outfit has put up.
Give me the
Civilization.
Leo,
Go ahead.
give
Yeah.
me the title of that article so I can put it in here, because we've got people asking where it's at. What was the title of it?
Okay,
I want to
it
find the
was
link.
the Commission on the Global Syndemic. If they just Google the Lancet and the Commission on the Global Syndemic,
Okay,
this paper, I don't think it's an article, it's more of a scholarly paper.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
The tagline is "Eat Lancet," so it has to do with food
Yes.
at the Lancet. So if you go through there, you'll come across it, I believe. Eat.
Right, just Google Eat Lancet,
Yeah.
eat hyphen Lancet, and then Commission on Global Syndemic. And it will pop right up.
Thank you.
And yeah, so let's look at the next graphic here. Civilization is in crisis. We can no longer feed our population a healthy diet while balancing planetary resource. And that was a quote from one of the members of this commission. I think there was one more. Here we go. They even have a podcast, folks, called the Eat Lancet Commission podcast. And they say we have got to eat in a different way. So this reference diet is really important because it's actually the new framework for what we need to ask the new food system to do. So they're going to dictate, folks, the UN Great Reset, World Economic Forum, muckety mucks, probably with the World Health Organization on board, are going to dictate to our national economies how we should change our food supply chain to eliminate meat and get more of these other items in place. And I believe this is going to cause a lot of food shortages in the years ahead. We have a short-term food shortage we're facing due to the manufactured COVID crisis, but I think it's going to only get worse as we move out further into the 2020s.
Well, and I think when people hear this and realize what this is all about, and that this is AOC telling us what to eat, they might feel even really foolish when they walk around and see all these people walking around with masks on. I mean, it's the same program. It's the same manufactured. We have to wear the mask to, flatten the curve, to save people, etc. Now we have to eat to
Yes.
save the planet, so we don't all die from the planet. So maybe one of these will strike a chord, and people will finally realize just how not insane, but devious, diabolical this is to orchestrate something this comprehensive. Again, this is global, new world order. This is global. What you eat, what you have to wear across your face. It's incredible, but it's here. And oh, by the way, these people are meeting 3 months from now in Davos, Switzerland. It's the same group, right? The Great Reset people.
Absolutely, yes.
And so they're actually, one of the things I think people really need to focus on that we don't hear much about is this whole notion of digital currency and universal income.
Yeah,
This stuff is all part of it.
100%.
Yeah, and the fact that we've got compliance on the masks is terrifying when you look at the rest of it.
And we've got
Exactly, because we are virtue signaling to these globalists that we are willing to go along with the program, even when the program is insane and there's no logical sense to it. You see people wearing the mask. They know the mask doesn't help them, but what? They're afraid to be confronted. They're afraid of confrontation. So they go along with the herd. Well, folks, that herd is getting ready to go off the cliff. You need to decide now whether you really want to be part of it or not.
And we've got a comment talking about how they're telling us what we can eat. They will also tell us who can eat.
Good point.
Yep,
Good point. If you're actually, that's a very good point, because part of the technocratic system is to assign a monetary value to every human life. They take multiple things into factor. They factor in your age. They factor in your professional experience, your job. You know, what are you able to produce versus how much you consume, and they put a monetary value on each human life. So if you don't have much of a value, say that you're a retired person over 65, say that you're in your 70s, you're retired, you're unhealthy, so you're a drain on the medical system.
You're talking about me.
Yeah, you have a negative human worth at that point. And so what this person is pointing out is not far-fetched. And remember, that was what Sarah Palin warned about in the death squad she talked about with the Obamacare.
Yeah. Yep.
It's real, folks. It's real.
Panels. Yep.
And it's not
Death
that
panels,
far,
right?
not that far in the future. There could be vaccines in 2021. There could be indicators about whether or not you've taken the vaccine. You could be allowed into a food store only if you've taken the vaccine, and they've got an electronic digital way to know that, etc. So again, getting to know people who could protect you against violence is also getting to know people who could help you perhaps get access to food if you're not planning on getting a vaccine next year.
And they're now talking about what they call a social vaccine. This social vaccine will be comprised of universal basic income and nutrition. You'll get a subsistence income like $12,000 a year. You'll get a subsistence diet provided to you, and you'll have free college education along with massive dietary changes. These technocrats will stop at nothing to push their great reset, which, as we know, is more accurately, the great transformation.
So they'll be monitoring compliance to all these things. And depending on your level of compliance, which they will know digitally, you'll be able to make a transaction. When you go to buy something, they will know whether you're eligible to buy it, whether you would be a low priority person, whether you would be put into the end of the queue, etc. Electronically, all of this is possible. The technology exists, artificial intelligence, and oh, by the way, this is where China is actually ahead of us, but this is headed our way as we get more and more immersed into the Chinese way of living. This is where we're headed for. So again, I don't think our audience today, maybe if they thought we were crazy, they would have dropped out a long time ago, but we're really talking about heavy duty, serious topics that are not fantasy. They're not novels. They're actually in process in other parts of the world like China, and they're roaring in our direction because China is basically going to give us the biggest bear hug ever, depending on what happens with the election.
And that's why we always give our sources here. I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Go and research it yourself. You know, put me to the test. Let me know if you think I'm crazy after researching it. How many of you know Prince Charles is a really bad guy? The entire British family, in my opinion, is suspect, but Prince Charles is really putting his star power behind the Great Reset, or as I call it, the Great Transformation.
He's probably getting paid. There's money crossing hands.
I can't imagine him needing any more money, but you're probably right. He says the old systems, the post-World War II global order, is simply outdated and must be trashed. Or as Joe Biden told us in his 2013 speech to the Export-Import Bank, quote, the global rules of the road need to be updated. Charles says, and I quote, in order to secure our future and to prosper, we need to evolve our economic model and put people and planet at the heart of global value creation. Global value creation. Does that not sound a bit like what we just described in placing values on the human person?
Wait, Leo, doesn't this kind of conflict with the other worldview, that the worldview that's under attack, which would be that every person is a child of God, built in the image of God, and that we value every single human being the handicapped, the elderly, etc. This sounds to me like this is where's God in all this? How do we get to this? Oh, there is no God unless his name is Allah. Now I get it. So when you trip over to that worldview, then you have all of these things coming your way. It's the lack of God that enables all of this to happen. So I'm going to guess that when we go to the Davos meeting, there's probably not going to be a chapel in the building. There might be a prayer room in the Davos meeting, but there's really not going to be any way to glorify the Judeo-Christian God in Davos. That's my guess.
I think you're probably on to something there, Dick.
Maybe.
I don't think God per se is going to be deleted from the world anytime soon, but I do believe that there is a war on the Judeo-Christian God, right?
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I think if it's Allah or, the Hindu, one of the hundreds of Hindu gods, or, Buddha, or Mother Earth, Pachamama, as Pope Francis has come out and endorsed, then I think we're cool. I think we're cool.
Well, I know.
Guys, we're stacking up about 15 questions
Oh,
and
my goodness.
comments,
Go-
so
go-
we
go,
might want to
Mary.
get to them fairly quickly.
Okay, I am close to wrapping up here.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just read the Prince Charles quote.
Yep.
Sounds to me, if you read that quote, he's talking about the end of the free enterprise system and the beginnings of a technocratic superstate based on the Chinese model and global communism, where we have social scoring and everybody is valued and everybody is scored according to their adherence to whatever the superstate says is the truth. We have the Ministry of Truth, and if the Ministry of Truth says 2 + 2 = 5, then you, as a citizen, a global citizen, will believe that 2 + 2 = 5, just like in George Orwell's famous book. Otherwise, you face a grim life if they allow you to live at all. They're really targeting, okay, in this great reset, the young people, 30 and under. They're hoping to attract thousands of them in more than 400 what they call hub cities around the world. As Dick mentioned, Davos is going to meet in January. And at the same time, simultaneously, that the big globalist muckety mucks are meeting in Davos, they're going to have these simultaneous hub city meetings that are targeting young people 30 and under. They're calling it the Global Shapers Community, which they describe as an interconnected, powerful virtual hub network that interconnects directly with the global leaders meeting at the actual meeting in Davos. But they're not just stopping, folks, with the young adults. This, where it really gets creepy, is they're targeting our children, trying to poison their minds with this crap. They even have put out the World Economic Forum, the leader of this whole Great Reset, which is, as we know, it's just a new term for the old, what they used to call the New World Order, transforming all of society to be a godless, technocratic superstate where we have no freedom. They have now come out, World Economic Forum, with a Sesame Street video. Let's play that video, Mary, for our
Okay,
audience.
I got to kick Dick off. 1 second.
Okay, kick me off. Go ahead, Grover. Grover was always my favorite.
Dick, I'm sorry. You're going to have to defer to Grover.
Okay, here we go.
All right, hold on. Let me pull this thing out.
Cookie Monster. Okay. Unbelievable.
Hello, everybody. It is I, your cute and adorable pal Grover, with a message for listeners of the Great Reset. Well, you are in luck because I know a thing or two about resetting. I reset my alarm clock every morning. But you are talking about resetting the entire world. Now that is a very big job. Well, my friend Miss Sherry Weston and I are here to help. On Sesame Street, we know that it is very important for children to learn and play every day. And because playtime is so important, we have been thinking of ways to help children all over the world learn and play at home. At first, it was hard when nobody could go to school, and I could not visit my friends like Elmo or, well, even Oscar the Grouch. Then we learned to have video playtime, which was a lot of fun and made us feel better.
You can't make it up, folks. I'm telling you, this is so bizarre, but you can see what they're doing there very subtly in the video. They're training children to look at the world and go about their lives in a virtual manner, which is they're using COVID to bring this all in, folks.
Oh, Leo, come on.
Yeah. Very good, Mary. Very good.
Good, Mary. Actually, those of us that are experts know Mary's voice was closer to the real Grover. That was an impersonator. That was a counterfeit. That was not the real guy. He would never do that.
I loved Grover.
Oh my God.
Well,
and they have just thrown him into the garbage can with what's the other guy? Oscar the Grouch.
Unbelievable. So yeah, don't worry about getting back to school and being with your friends.
Homeschool.
And playing with your friends. Everything now is going to be done on the computer.
Oh my God, I never thought of that. Remember Kermit the Frog?
Yes.
It's not easy being green.
Right.
Yes. Setting this up a long time ago.
Yes.
It's not easy being green.
We've had a couple people talking about, and I'm going to try and see if I stump you two. Remember the movie Soylent Green?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Do you remember what it was they were feeding them?
It was human beings.
That's right.
And
it was little green. It was green food too.
Yep.
Soylent Green.
Okay, questions.
Where do I start? Well, there's a lot of people saying we are not crazy and thanking us for everything that we've been doing. And mostly a lot of comments than questions, but the very first one that came in, let's go back to the very beginning. If we understand that the election is November 3rd and they can't decide the winner until after that date, what is the final date? And does Pelosi take it from the House? What stops her? Any ideas what the final date is before all of this has to be finalized? Is it March 4th? It's referenced here in the question. I don't know if it goes that long or not.
I thought it was January
21st is when they're normally sworn in, but if they still can't, and I know they're going back with, I think, was it the Supreme Court or was it the state courts on Pennsylvania, allowing them to have 10 more days after the election to still count the ballots? I think there's a couple of states doing that, isn't there?
Yeah. Pennsylvania is 3 days. They have 3 days.
That's still being argued,
I
though,
believe
isn't it?
Michigan has 13 or 14 days.
Now, I think some of that got pulled back. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Just think of all the confusion. Just think of all the
Exactly.
confusion.
Yep.
And if things are in the balance and somebody says, well, we've got two states with 4 days and 3 more states with 7 days, we're not finished counting. Why can't we go back and also get 7? I mean, this is a lawyer. This is the lawyer's dream.
Yeah.
This is a And in the meantime, I mean, it's a terrible thing. But if you think about a ball game where the lead changes and the fans go crazy, and the lead changes and the fans go crazy, the fans we're talking about tonight are not necessarily peaceful fans. So as this goes back and forth, hopefully we'll get over it with minimal damage to our people and our property. But I don't know the rules, so I really can't jump in here at all. I have no idea.
I'm not 100% on that either. Most of this is commentary. I'm not seeing a question in most of these, but this audience tonight has just been amazing, and with responses, what I've already answered 77, And we've answered close to 16 others that I just dismissed. And there's still 18 of them out here, but everybody's pretty thankful for what we've been doing tonight and trying to help educate us and walk through it all. So thank you, Leo, for doing this tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And we're coming up again in a week, right, Dick?
Next week, yeah,
Yeah,
that will be our final one.
The
Right.
night before the election.
That is correct. The night before the election, Leo will be with us, and we will all be taking one last look before the election. And I mean, frankly, every week here is incredible. I wonder what will happen this week between now and the next time we see you, Leo. And again, you jumped in here. Everybody, listen to the content we got to tonight. So Leo really didn't just jump in to take the opening that happened. And again, we want to thank Claire for everything. But I think, Leo, you really loaded it up tonight. We're
Okay.
really, really grateful.
Thank you. And I do see a couple of questions I want to respond to real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
One, Leo must have seen Dinesh D'Souza's movie Trump Card, because the 2 + 2 = 5 was featured in that movie. No, I have not seen that movie. I have not even seen a trailer for that movie, but I have read 1984 by George Orwell like 3 times. And that's where I got that from.
I watched that this weekend. I didn't think it was as good as the China Glenn Beck one that was done. It was mostly about Biden and Hunter Biden and China. It got a little more in depth of who Hunter Biden is and what he's been doing and the lewdness of it all. But I didn't think it was as good.
Okay.
As what Glenn Beck came out with for free, no less. I had to pay like $3.99 on YouTube to watch it.
Okay, then we've got a question from Kathleen Beverly that says, do you think COVID will disappear after the election, or will they pay the Chinese to come up with something more effective to rid the undesirables and decrease the population? That's an interesting question. A lot of people do believe that if Biden were to win, that the COVID thing would suddenly go away. I don't agree with that. I tend to believe that it will stick around for at least another year, and that, you know, Biden being as pliable as he is, remember, he said he would do whatever the experts tell him to do. And so they would be able to make such great headway in implementing this great reset under Biden that they would not be able to accomplish under Trump. So I don't think that letting COVID just disappear, or at least tamping down the media hysteria, would accomplish their goal of implementing the great reset, the great transformation of society that they're looking for under this new world order. So I don't think it's going anywhere. Let's see.
Leo, let me comment on that question. I think the key part of that question was decrease the population.
Yeah, that was another part of the question.
Whether it's COVID, I don't think COVID does not have a high enough mortality rate to drop the population in half or by 2/3. Again, people like Bill Gates and other great reset people really think we have 2 and 3 times more people on the earth right now that we should.
Right.
So they are very much in favor of reducing the population, you know, whether it's by you know, a Stalin or Mao kind of activity where people are just disappear, or isolating people. I think that the whole notion of decreasing the population is a very, very serious objective.
I do agree
That Joe and Kamala would have no problem with.
Mm-hmm.
And who are the ones they would most likely want to get rid of? We've already covered it tonight.
Right.
It's the baby boomers.
Yep.
The older folks. And so it's interesting to me that COVID is the most dangerous to the people they most want to get rid of. If you're young, under 30, there is almost no risk of dying of this thing.
Well, think about it though, Leos. The younger ones are the ones that have been raised with the mentality to be a Democrat. So they really don't want to get rid of them. They want to get rid of you and I.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if you're under 30, even if you're a conservative, they haven't given up on you. They think that maybe they can persuade you to join their side of different issues, because people do evolve a little bit as they get older in their way of thinking. But people who are over 50, very rarely do they change their worldview. By 50, 55, 60, you're pretty much decided how you view the world. Yeah, there's exceptions.
There are exceptions.
What's his name? Leo 2.0 on
Yeah,
Fox?
Leo Terrell.
Leo Terrell?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I love that guy, but he is an anomaly. Yeah.
Well, I even look at David Horowitz. My gosh, think about David Horowitz and how liberal lefty he was until he realized what the truth was. And now he calls himself an agnostic, but I tell you, he knows more about scripture, Judeo-Christian scripture, than I've ever heard anybody. So,
correct.
Yeah.
How old is David now?
80s. He's in his 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Still doing great work. But
yeah,
there are people out there that are changing in their 50s. It's just hard. I mean,
yes,
most of them are set in their ways by that point. But anyway, so
yeah, I think it's the 55 for sure. The 55 and older that they really would like to, and especially the 60 and older, they would like to eliminate as much of those as possible. But only the conservatives, you know.
Right.
And you know, but Dick's right. They probably have something else up their sleeve that's going to be much more effective than COVID.
I think that's about it for the questions. If you want to start closing us out.
Absolutely. I'll just say that we'll be back in one short week. We have no idea what could happen between now and then.
Yeah.
You know, keep the faith, and everybody just pray for our country, our president, and the outcome of this election, and that we somehow manage to get through it without violence.
And Amy Coney Barrett and her family as well.
Absolutely. Public officials, not just President Trump.
That's right.
All these suddenly being a U.S. senator or a Congress member as a Republican has become a very dangerous job.
Sure has.
Assassinations is one thing that is on their list of things to start doing at the appropriate time. So we definitely need to be praying in prayer against that.
And I think we've said it in the past, divine intervention had a lot to do with the formation of this country. It is miraculous. The Constitution, the Declaration, the Constitution are miraculous documents. Let's hope and pray that divine intervention happens tonight, this week, next week, and in the aftermath of the election. We're going to need divine intervention so we're able to continue as a free country, exercising the rights that God gave us and having a government that allows us and protects those rights as their primary function. Ideally, they will get out of our everyday lives except for that. But right now, we just need to preserve the ability to be free in our own land and to continue the experiment for freedom that started a few hundred years ago. So with that, we'll say good night. We'll invite you to come back and bring a friend. Next Monday night, we'll get to see Leo again.
And I'm going to say one last thing to finish up with what Dick just said. And you may like it or not, but vote Trump 2020. It's the only way we're going to keep our freedom.